Okay, welcome back to another author interview at Crystal Lake. And today our guest is William Sterling. And he's here to talk about his new release, String Them Up. And so I'm going to let him introduce himself now because he can do it better than I can. So take it away.
Yeah, thanks. Excited to be here. Yes, like you said, I'm William Sterling. I'm a horror author and a podcaster. I've been self-publishing various books for the last 8, 9 years, something like that at this point. And I'm really excited because String Them Up is going to be my first traditionally published novel. So to have it coming out through Crystal Lake is just insane to me. um, but yeah, so excited to be here.
Yeah, well, congratulations on getting it publishing through Crystal Lake. And that's a great segue because next question is tell us what the book is about.
Of course. So, String Them Up is about this detective that has had a ridiculously bad time in his life recently. Big tragedies have befallen him, and he is looking to hit a hard reset button on his life. He goes out and accepts a job with an old friend of his in a place called Hollow Hills. It is this secluded little town out in the middle of nowhere, mountainous Georgia, up in the northeast part. But he is coming out here with the idea that he's just going to take it very easy for the rest of his days. He's going to kind of retreat out here and just waste the rest of his days away. And that is not what happens because that would make a very boring book. As he gets to Hollow Hills, all of the fit starts hitting the shan, and he has to figure out what is going on before the entire town implodes or explodes around him. And murder puppets. I've got to work those into the pitch somehow. There are murder puppets.
Yeah, Murder Puppets is always a good pitch. So
Right.
okay, so what were your inspirations for writing the book?
Inspiration for writing the book, it started out as kind of an exploration of grief and unprocessed trauma. My wife is a counselor, so we talk off and on about just kind of the things that she sees in her clients, not like targeted enough to violate HIPAA or anything like that. Please, FBI, leave us alone. Um, but something that she was having a hard time with some of her clients recently was she has this whole slew of clients that are accepting that bad things have happened in their life, and they're actively working through their problems and trying to seek help and seek solutions to them, and embracing like that moment in their lives for what it is. And those people are being so much better off for it. And there are another group of people that are kind of going to counseling begrudgingly. They don't want to face anything that's happened to them grief-wise head on. They don't want to process their trauma. They're trying to ignore it. They're trying to stuff it deep down inside. And she's over here going through all of these things and just kind of like talking through these big issues with me. And of course, the stupid horror author in me is sitting on the couch going, there's a story here. So this was originally my exercise in trying to like navigate that sort of a psychology of what does drive people to like the worst dark recesses of their minds. And it started out as this very serious story and very like dark and grim and everything else. And it wasn't really working. So I went back to the drawing board after I had draft 1 and 2 done and kind of thought through it. And I realized I'm not a super dark and depressing author. That's not really the vibe that I bring to the table. I like having fun with my stories. I kind of self-branded as popcorn horror, like stuff that you want to be yelling at the TV and throwing the popcorn at. So once I had that and I had this very morbid story, I went back and tried to think of what fun element I could bring to the table, and murder puppets made a lot of sense. Puppets are kind of these vehicles for us showcasing our emotions, even if we're not wanting to talk about something directly that's going on with us. We get dolls, we get action figures, and we can kind of play out these deep emotions that we're having through the dolls. And just using murder puppets then as a vehicle to have some fun with these people that are going through a horrible time and projecting their bad times into the dolls. Like the story started clicking from there, and I don't know, it kind of came into its own from there.
Yeah, and plus creepy dolls is pretty much a staple horror trope, isn't it?
Right? Yeah.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about the main character. What's he like? What can readers expect?
Sinclair is a man that is very much defeated by the world, and he is at the end of his rope and kind of at the edge of the cliff and deciding what the next step is. If the next step's going to be forward off the cliff or backwards, and like reassessing. He is not in a good place for the vast majority of this book, and not spoiling the ending. But he is having a very hard time. We see his friend trying to pull him out of it, but his struggle through the whole thing is coming to terms with the tragedy that's happened in his past, and seeing if he can build back from that, seeing if he can put pieces of his life back together.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about some of the secondary characters. What are they like? Are they a little scene stealing?
Not as much. The main antagonist, when we meet him, is a big eccentric character, and I had a lot of fun writing somebody who is verifiably insane. He has completely cracked mentally, and he was a lot of fun to write, and having him sort of paralleling some things that were happening in Sinclair's story was fun. I wanted the story to stay very focused on those two, and kind of with the vehicles as puppets. So the other secondary characters aren't super well rounded. They're a little bit of stereotypes, but I tried to do that on purpose so that you kept your focus on the two people that I really wanted parallels to be drawn with.
So tell us a little bit about the villain. I mean, those insane characters are very fun to write. I've written a few myself.
Yes, yes.
So
Um,
how did you go about writing that? And did you have a lot of fun with it?
yes, I had so much fun with it. I So the main antagonist's name is Gregory Rochester. He is introduced to Sinclair, our main character, as this sort of boogeyman figure in the town. He used to be the toymaker for the town, had this really good relationship with all the kids. Everybody would like come to his toy store and hang out, and everybody loved him. And then there's a tragedy in his past. So here we're getting into the parallels a little bit. And it sends him over the edge. He secludes himself on the edge of town. He has become this hermit figure, that is stringing up these decrepit dolls at the borderline of his property as like a warning to nobody come on here. I'm the scary guy. Don't come on my property. Um, so he's kind of starting there, and we don't get a lot of behind the scenes stuff until Sinclair meets him head on as things are going nuts, and then we understand the depths of his madness. And I haven't really given myself permission to write somebody that is entirely unhinged before. All of my previous villains are bad people, but their motivations like sort of kind of make sense if you squint and tilt your head. And I tried to keep them somewhat grounded. With Rochester, I just wanted somebody that's gone, somebody that is like potentially even less human at this point than the murder puppets running around. And just taking every crazed thought that he had, I would write them down. I would walk away from them for a week. I would come back and I would just try to find some way to crank it up to an 11. Like, how do I make this guy even weirder? Like, all of these normal references that he's making have to go. We've got to make this thing. Every line that he utters needs to be a what the fuck moment.
Mhm.
So yeah, coming back to that, it was the most fun I've had writing a character in a long time.
Yeah, I wrote a character that was a little mentally unstable too, and I had her rhyming stuff. So
Yes, the sing song, the nursery rhymes, perfect.
yeah, obviously your characters are going through deep emotional journeys. So how far did you take them, especially the protagonist, to the breaking point, or did you break them?
I broke the antagonist. And I think that gets pretty obvious by the halfway mark. I don't think I'm spoiling anything here, but he is long gone from this plane. The main character, though, I wanted to push him so that he could see kind of that turning point, and really make him consciously have to face that head on. Seeing what the results of going down this path of just stuffing everything down and not facing his issues, not addressing his problems, and not trying to like save himself, will lead him down the same road as Rochester, and he has to make a decision at a couple of points in this book, to seek the help that he needs to turn the car around, as the line goes in the book. And I think that'll all make a lot more sense once you read the book. I don't know. I'm trying to speak a little bit vaguely here to not spoil anything, because we're into the third act right now, but it's also like so critical to understanding. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Okay, so you were talking about murder puppets being part of the plot, so I'm assuming there's a little supernatural element in this?
Yes, sort of ish. I think I think a fun part with a lot of murder puppet um, properties that we talk about, or murder puppet pieces that we talk about, like Chucky, Annabelle, the rest of them. I think a really fun part of those stories is when the characters do not know what's animated this evil doll. I think that gives the evil doll, or the evil puppet, or the evil toy, or whatever it is, I think that gives them a sort of power over the characters that you don't see in a lot of other horror avenues. So if we've got a main character going up against a serial killer, you shoot them, you
Mhm.
stab them. There are ways to beat a serial killer. If they're going up a demon, you call the exorcist and get them to your house, and hopefully they don't run away screaming. But there's action steps you can take to most of our horror villains. And it's not so much with an evil doll. Until you know what's going on with it, you don't even know what approach to take. If it's like the Chucky reboot and there's just a virus that got into him and it's running amok, you've got to find a way to short circuit him. Bringing in an exorcist won't help. If it's Annabelle, then you bring in the exorcist, and trying to fry the circuits in a microwave is just going to piss her off. But there's this whole avenue of murder puppets that makes them invincible for a big chunk of the story. So I tried to approach it that way with my story too. I didn't want the audience or the characters to know exactly what's animated these things the first 1, 2, 3 times you see them, so that when we finally get the pieces of that puzzle brought together, it's this empowering moment, and the audience gets what we can go do now, and Sinclair gets what we can go do now, and we have a way to battle back a little bit.
Yeah, so you're essentially putting the audience, the reader, in the steps of the protagonist as he's finding out, they're
Right.
finding out.
Right, because it's that unknowing that makes things scary, right?
Yeah.
If you know exactly how something ticks and you know the way to battle back against it, that gives you some defenses. I want readers defenseless for a little bit here.
Well, that makes good tension too.
Right.
Okay, so what's your favorite scene, without giving spoilers,
Mm.
in the book?
Okay, I've spoiled this on a couple of other podcasts, and it's even the cover of the book, so I think I can talk about this one. The first big kill that gets thrust out into the community, that everybody gets to see, and just everybody collectively understands that this threat is real. It is not some little doll just like sitting in a shadow and suddenly they're sitting in another shadow. Like, these are puppets out here killing things. The first big kill is with a character named Bellman. He gets taken by the murder puppets in his own home in a scene that I think is kind of cool. And then the next morning, Sinclair is on his way to the station, and he finds the mayor flayed, with his innards pulled out, hanging above the town square, with his innards kind of suspending his body like a puppet figurine, hanging from the street lamps and the stop signs and everything. And I really like that moment because, one, it's hyper gory and fun. It's not a deeply gore centric book, but I did go ahead and let myself lean into it for this one scene. So I had a lot of fun writing that, and the oh shit factor with the characters all running around the crime scene trying to piece together like how this thing happened and what's going on here, and he's hanging in the street. I don't know. I had a lot of fun with it. There's a couple of other side characters there that are a little bit of stereotypes through the rest of the book, but having them write what felt like genuine reactions to that scene was a lot of fun, because some of them are characters in their own right and have these overblown reactions. I don't know. It was a lot of things coming together for me.
So, when you were writing that scene, did you have second thoughts about how far to go with the gore? Did you just decide, nope, gonna just go with it?
I decided to just go with it. I had this little picture of the cover of Bellman strung up by his innards, kind of suspended over the computer the whole time I was writing the book. So I knew that scene and that image was going to be one of the things that I really wanted to ingrain in people from the story. I wanted that to be one of the big takeaway moments. So I don't think you get those big takeaway moments if you enter a scene really reserved. I think if you want to have a big impact on your reader, you need to have a big effort as a writer for that moment, if that makes sense.
Definitely. So, why did you decide to write in the horror genre? What appeals to you about it?
I have always loved horror. I had kind of a weird upbringing where I have parents that are fairly conservative when it comes to things like this. They don't like horror themselves, so they wouldn't take me out to Blockbuster or anything like that to go get horror because it wasn't what they wanted to watch. So I always had to sneak my horror. I had to stay up until 3 in the morning and then turn on the TV in my room and keep it very quiet so nobody heard. So there was just always this fun little allure of the forbidden associated with it that it's fun. And then as I grew up and as I kind of started thinking about a writing career and getting into this more often, horror is just the most fun genre. There are rules to like building a good scare and things like that, and what you can do with characters and tropes like that. But as far as trying to flex your imagination, you can do anything you want in this genre,
Mm,
as long as it gives somebody the heebie jeebies at some point. You don't have to have the two main characters fall in love at the end like a romance does. The hero doesn't have to save the day and defuse the bomb at the end of the story like action does. Horror is this wide open sandbox, and any story you're telling can go any direction. And I think that's just so liberating and enjoyable as a creator and as a fan of the genre too, watching other things and having no clue what direction Midsommar is about to take off in, or Hereditary when the one moment happens in the middle and the whole movie shifts. Like, yeah, it's so fun because you don't get those sorts of moments and those sorts of reactions in other media.
yeah. It's also very versatile too. I find it can lend in itself into other genres very easily.
Mm-hmm.
So you can mash it up and do all sorts of things with it.
Right. You can have a horror romance. It's a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually know a couple of people who write horror erotica. So,
Yes, right. Like it can be a thing, and you can take it farther than the straight romance people like
mm,
typically do. Like the unchained foundations of horror. There are no limits. It's great.
yeah. Okay. So, what's the hardest part of writing horror fiction for you? And did any of the parts of the book give you any trouble?
The hardest part of writing horror for me is making sure that the two elements of the story align, the human story and the scary part of the story. I have this deep rooted belief that you want to line those up if you're telling a good horror story. You can have werewolves running around that have absolutely nothing to do with the story you're telling with your characters, but I just don't think those stories have as much power. So whenever I approach a story, I want to have an intentional human story to tell. So like with this one, it's Sinclair needing to process his grief and having to come to that realization. And then finding something that matches with. So puppets were a really good fit for this once I kind of put those two together. But there was this long period where I didn't know that that's what the story needed. I tried writing it as a very straightforward. I mentioned Hereditary already. Let's just stick with that. I tried to write it as a very straightforward, like A24 sort of a horror story to start with. There weren't any murder puppets in the first draft. It was just this malevolent, evil, unspoken thing lurking about, and it wasn't fun, and it didn't really match what I was trying to do with Sinclair's story. So just that journey of trying to find a horror element that I felt like was the right fit for it. I struggled with that a little bit this time, and I've struggled with that in the past. Other times it's been I've had the horror element. I really want to write a slasher. I don't know what human story I want to tell along with that, but we're gonna write a slasher. So just trying to marry ideas sometimes gets difficult.
Mm. So, what do you enjoy most about writing horror?
The fun scenes, when all the blood and guts start hitting the walls. I really enjoy coming up with just utterly batshit kills. That is something that I try to pride myself on a lot. I do not ever want somebody to die by just being stabbed with a knife. Like that's been done so often. The shock factor's gone. Um, if somebody's dying, they are going to explode. They are going to get hacked apart. They are going to again. There's no limits here. It's horror. There's very few like add trigger warnings, but then once you add the trigger warning, that there's very few limits to what you
Mm.
can do to a person to dismember them in this genre.
Yes, you could do various bad things to people in the horror genre.
Yes.
Okay, so who are some of your favorite authors?
Oh, you can't do that to me. Oh, there's so many. Okay, I just did this the other day, so I'm gonna try to avoid like the big names, but like obviously, if you're not reading Paul Tremblay, go read Paul Tremblay and Josh Mallor and Laurel Hightower, like Haley Piper, all the big ones. They're so good. Trying to do a little bit more of a deep dive, though, people that I love reading their stuff, and I don't think they get as much attention as they deserve. Kat Valor just came out with a book called Revenge Arc that is awesome. It is written in this very atypical format. It is not a like novel structure. It is an amalgamation of Reddit posts and Twitter posts and blog posts and things like that revolving around this online webcomic that has gone very off the rails and has inspired a real life serial killer to follow in the shoes of what was happening in the webcomic. And it is all of these people online trying to piecemeal together, is this really happening? How much of this is happening? How can this thing be stopped? Should this thing be stopped? All of that other stuff. And just that sounds very odd when I try to give the short pitch of this full novella in a minute or less. But like, trust me, go dive into it. It is like an accessible House of Leaves. Is I think the best way I can frame it. If you like that non-linear, atypical structure of a story, but you wish House of Leaves made any sort of sense, um, Revenge Arc is probably for you. And then shout out to Damian Casey. He writes some of the best horror comedies possible. Coffin Dodger is fantastic. And everybody should go do that if you want a good laugh and to be, a little unnerved at the end of the book.
Okay, so what do you like to do when you're not writing? Do you have any hobbies or hidden talents?
I love watching baseball. Baseball is my passion sport. I've got two kids, so any hobbies that I used to have, they're dead and gone now. I've got to chase the little monsters around the house and make sure they don't murder one another. So yeah, looking after them is a big thing. What else? I feel like there's something else I should say here, but yeah. Watching sports. I used to be a big runner, so Going out and doing cross country and track stuff is still something that I'm passionate about, even if I don't get a lot of time for it.
Okay, so why don't you tell us about some of the other books you've written?
Sure. The main one that I'm talking about and promoting at this point is Killer Be Killed. It is a reverse slasher trilogy that I've been working on in self-publishing. I kind of started it as a passion project to re-inspire my love of writing horror again. I went through kind of a dark spell where I was uh, not trusting myself anymore, and I was trying to write stories and fit into molds that weren't me. That I was trying to write in the wrong voice and force myself to be somebody that I wasn't. So the first Killer Be Killed book was kind of my last gasp of trying to inspire myself, of just screw all of the like elevated horror nonsense that I was trying to write. I'm just going to go write something that I want to. I'm going to make it as blood soaked as I want. I'm going to make it as absurd as I want. There might not be a single piece of literary merit to this, but it is going to be fun, damn it. And writing it got my groove back. It saved me. It saved my career. But effectively, what it is it is a reverse camp slasher novel. So in camp slashers, our favorite part is the killer in the woods, right? We always end up cheering for them. And there's something weird and dark and morbid about that, cheering for Jason to come out of the woods and kill a bunch of camp counselors. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to write a book where you were actively encouraged to cheer for that killer from the woods, where there was no guilt associated with it. The people in the camp that they are coming after 2000% deserve everything that's coming. And this guy gets super powered and sent after him like a rocket. And it was awesome. But I had so much fun writing it that it kind of inspired me to stretch it out into a trilogy. I figured out what a good character arc could be for the characters that are going to survive the whole thing. I figured out what sort of a message I wanted to drive home with this. So Killer Be Killed 2 is called Homewrecker. And it takes the reverse camp slasher novel and makes it a reverse home invasion slasher. And then the third one is going to come out sometime next year once I actually get it on paper. And it's gonna take it one more step farther. It's gonna be a revenge slasher send up.
Okay.
But yeah.
So that's actually a good segue to the next question is what are you working on now and what can we expect for you in the future?
Oh, I have so many things. This is okay. So this is the thing that I'm learning about traditional publishing that's a little tougher than self-publishing. When I was self-publishing, I was allowed to just talk about whatever I wanted, and it was so great. I've got rules now, though. I have a couple of short stories showing up in anthologies soon that are amazing anthologies for wonderful causes, and I want to be pitching them right now, but I can't. So please follow me at spooky_Sterling on Twitter and Instagram, so that when those things pop, I can go, hey, here's the good anthology. Here's the good like cause that I was referring to. But there's that. I've got another secret project picked up with secret publisher to be part of big secret project. God, I can't say anything about this, can I? Pirate horror. I think I can say the general genre. We've got a pirate horror that kind of goes Indiana Jones-esque with it. And it was a lot of fun to write, kind of like this was. But I get to talk about that any day now. So I'm excited about that. Yeah, a lot of stuff I can't talk about, but a lot of stuff that I'm really jazzed about and mad that I can't talk about.
Well, I think you gave us a nice tease with pirate horror because I'm definitely intrigued. I've done a little pirate horror myself in my fantasy trilogy, so yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, so I think we'll wrap the interview up here and tell everybody where they can find you and your books.
Hey, of course. I am still on Twitter, X, or whatever it is. at spooky_sterling, and I am on Instagram at spooky_sterling. I'm on Blue Sky, but I don't remember that overlong handle. If you look up William Sterling on Blue Sky, though, I feel like I'm still probably the only one. And then I've got a website, William Sterling at Wixsite, and I'm on Amazon. If you Google me, you can find me. Is the short version. And I would love to talk horror with just anybody that's interested.
Okay, so you'll be able to find those links in the description as well as String 'em Up, as- which is out today. And so be sure and check that book out. And that's it for this interview. And so for now, bye.